Hello and welcome to the director's commentary for Redwood Massacre Annihilation. It's been a good couple of months since I last watched this, so hopefully I've recovered enough or less traumatized to get through this in one go. Wow, I don't know where to start. I mean, this movie was filled with drama from start till finish. Maybe I'll tell you some of the behind the scenes drama. Maybe I won't, I'm not sure yet. So straight off the bat, this opening scene was a reshoot. We shot it maybe as much as 5 months after the actual initial block of filming. We were only given 18 days to shoot the movie, which, you know, in film terms, that's really not a long time. And even though this is a lower budget movie, or as the SAG union in America like to remind us, a super micro budget film. Not just micro budget, super micro budget. So yeah, 18 days. I mean, the movie's obviously a lot bigger than the first one, and the way I scripted it, it was really scripted in, you know, with the fact that I knew I was only going to get 18 or 20. Hopefully I was hoping to get 22 days to shoot. So a lot of the movie there's very little location changes. You know, it's a very tight cast. It was really, the script was really designed for this type of film. So this is actually one of my stepdaughter's friends, who is an aspiring actress. She kindly agreed to come down for a day and get stabbed. Right off the bat, one of the big problems we had with this movie, and it's crazy because it's a slasher film, was we had such big problems with the gore. It's probably fair to say that only maybe 10% of what I had originally planned actually worked. It's just one of those annoying things, but there we go. So I think we're into maybe day 7. We marked out a day for drones, and every day we marked down, it was raining. And we filmed this in the Scottish summertime. So eventually we kept pushing it back, and it got to the point where we were actually going to lose it. We're going to lose the drone operator. So we travelled all the way up to this location to do Damien's shots, and you can't see it, but it is actually still raining. And Kirk, the drone operator, he was pretty cool because it turns out there's a way you can. The worst part is when the drone takes off. That's where most of the rain's going to hit the lens, you know, because of the wind around the blades, I guess. And he managed to do it a weird way where you position a camera a certain angle, and it kind of stopped the rain from hitting the lens on the initial takeoff. And that kind of saved our ass, because there was a couple of cool shots I couldn't use because the rain hit the lens, but 95%. I don't know how he did it, but he managed to shoot in pouring rain. So Drew Denton. Yeah, so I've never actually spoken to Drew. It's a weird story, the music. We had a composer attached, and he maybe did about 30 minutes of the film, and it wasn't bad. And we kind of parted ways because it felt like I was forcing him to do something, you know, that he probably wasn't comfortable with. Originally I wanted to be quite not an arty-farty score, but like a kind of rustic, horrible score. But the more I edited the movie, the more I swung towards maybe having a more kind of Hollywood feel. And Drew Denton luckily came on board and basically knocked it out the park first time. I think I only had one change in the entire music score, and that was taking some music out. Every single section of the movie scored for me was perfect first time.
I'm afraid it's not good news.
So Damien Puckler. So yeah, I remember one of the producers of this movie. He made a movie called The Death Factory, or The Butchers as it's called in the US. And I saw Damien in that movie, and this was like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And it was more like a horror martial arts. It was a kind of messed up movie, but he definitely stood out in that film. But when we were initially thinking about making a second Redwood Massacre, I would like to say I was involved in the casting, but not really. It's just the way these things go. Maybe I should talk about how we set this up. So the first film came out in 2014, and it was kind of like a sleeper hit for a small independent film. Only in the US and Germany, I think. I think it came out in Japan, but I'm not sure it did that well. But after the first Redwood Massacre, we shot a few other movies, and it was kind of weird because we quickly realised that actually more people had watched the first Redwood Massacre than our other films combined. So I kind of hatched a plan to try and get a sequel off the ground. That was a cash-in. At the time, the last movie we did, it was called The Dark Within, and it's fair to say that that was a complete and utter failure. And there were some problems with that movie, and the distributor, he sat on that film for a year. I think he was so annoyed that it took so long to make and get that film through post-production. And in that year, I could kind of see the writing on the wall for that film, and I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to get to make another movie again. So my idea was to use the financials for Redwood Massacre, which are not amazing compared to other bigger movies, but for a film that costs, say, $50,000 or £30,000, when you see the financials against that kind of budget, it looked amazing. So I sent, I don't even know if the other producers know this yet, because they probably take credit for setting this movie up, but I sent one of the executive producers, basically the guy with all the money. I pitched him, I said, look, I want to set this movie up. I don't want you to pay for it. I don't expect you to pay for it, because you've paid for the other ones and still waiting for a return. But do you know anyone in your circle of friends that might do it? And he actually got back and he's like, you know what, send me the financial reports. And I was like, bingo, got him. So I was like, cool, I'll send you the financial reports. And obviously it looks amazing. And he's like, you know what? Okay, leave it with me. And then maybe a couple of days later, one of the producers got in touch and he's like, it looks like we're going to be making Redwood Massacre 2. I was like, oh, really? So, but anyway, I had designed and at this point, you know what, I never had a script. I just had an idea that involved Damien's character. I thought it'd be cool if there was a serial killer in amongst the group. So not necessarily have the burlap killer be the big bad guy. It's a bit like the Hellraiser movies, you know, where the Pinhead and that are obviously the fans' favourites, but they're not necessarily the most evil in the movie. There's Damien stabbing poor Lisa Cameron from the original film. Very lucky to get her to come back, and this was really early on in the shoot. So anyway, I never had a script, so they kind of, I wouldn't say they greenlit the movie, but they were like, look, okay, let's get moving on this and see what happens. And my original thinking was, really no one's seen the first one. Okay, it did well for an independent film, but maybe I should approach this as more of a standalone film.
My name.
So I started writing the script, and then the budget just kept getting bigger and bigger, and it got to the point where we had like a call, and they were like, you know what, making these movies without any known actors is kind of, you know, we're kind of over that now. Especially the executive producer that's made countless movies with, you know, bigger names like Stephen Lang and that kind of stuff. So one of the conditions was make sure you can secure a known name. If you do that, you get the money. So I was like, wow, okay, you know. So I was kind of out of that process, and there was a few names put about until one day they were like, we're gonna send the movie to Danielle Harris, and I was like, what? She's never gonna do this movie. She's done like a million of them. I mean, how many bad guys is she, you know, masked guys with axes, you know, how many is she gonna face off against? And this was, whew, by this point we only had like a month before we were kind of scheduled to shoot, and then we got the news Danielle Harris was in. So it's always funny how these kind of movies are set up. It's such a, once they have a sniff of getting the money or maybe getting the money, it's like a mad rush to get the film in production. And it's one of those things where it's maybe not a good thing they're done like this, but the guys that produce these movies get the movies made. So it's just one of those things you got to learn with. So Damien, yes, God, I'm way off track here, but I think they were trying to cast someone younger. And this went on for a few weeks, and the guy, I can't remember what his name was, but he was in the movie Unfriended. He pulled out, so we were kind of stuck. We'd already cast Gary Casper as Gus, Tevi Poe as Jennifer. I did the post-production on a movie called Army of One, and as soon as I saw Gary, I was like, that guy has to be in one of my movies. I just loved him. So we were kind of running out of time. We had Danielle, we had all the cast. We'd found John Campling. I can't remember how we got in touch with John, but the Max character was the last to be cast, and I've got a funny feeling it was me. I was over in Los Angeles for the premiere of another movie I did, and Damien, he showed up at the screening. We kind of really quickly met, as you do in Los Angeles, and he just kind of popped in my head. I was like, why don't we just cast Damien? And then at first they were like, well, I don't know if that's going to suit the role, because Damien's like martial artist. He was in the big American show Grimm, but I don't know if any of the producers have watched that, because Damien's actually a really good actor. And so they weren't against it. They were like, okay, if you want Damien, we'll go and get Damien. And luckily, Damien agreed to do it. We had like one Skype call, and I tried to explain what we were going to do. And even at the last moment, when all the actors were flying over from LA, we nearly didn't get Damien. There was a problem with the SAG, which is the actors' union. And at one point, he wasn't even going to be going on the plane. Like, I don't know all the rubbish things. But anyway, we got Damien. So here we are. This house is actually where the producers, Damien and Gary Casper, stayed at during the duration of the shoot. And they had like this big garage next door, and it was actually filled. Everywhere was just cat food. So it took like an hour to clear out this garage, and I mean, it wasn't the greatest location, but the schedule was just so tight. We were looking for places that were so close that we could easily move in and out, and not lose any time. Like I said, it was an 18-day shoot, but it was scheduled where basically you couldn't lose one scene in that day because you just did not have the time to make it back up. And obviously, eventually, as the shoot went on, there was problems, and I think we had to drag some of the crew in on one of their day offs to try and catch up. So I don't know if anyone's noticed, but Damien went in wearing a grey sweater, and now he's just got a blue t-shirt. When we came back to shoot this, we couldn't find the grey sweater, and this was after we had wrapped Tevi Poe scenes in the underground bunker, and for some strange reason, she had stolen his jumper to take home. I don't know, she's just like framing it or sniffing it at night.
She's impressive.
So like I said, we tried to keep the location changes as small as possible. So we tried to do all the different locations in the first couple of days. The library, the gym, the warehouse. And the reason we did this is because it takes so long to unpack a van, take all the lights, all the camera equipment, set up a scene, wrap that scene, pack everything back up, move to another location. You actually lose hours in the day doing this. And for this schedule, we just literally every minute counted when we were filming this. So this was shot in Aberdeen City, Scotland, and the gym owners kindly let us shoot there for, I think, maybe 4 hours one morning. So it was, you can notice most of it's handheld. It was kind of a mad rush to get this all done and then move to the next location. There was actually a bigger reveal of the mask. It was a cooler scene, and we just had to cut it out and do this. It's a bit disappointing, but we just didn't have the time. I think the very first scene we actually shot was in the library at the beginning of the movie. That was the first day, and it's a bit weird because you don't really know anyone, and you know some of the crew, but you don't really know the actors. So it's always a bit awkward. It's a bit nerve-wracking, and we had Damien and John and some extras for the library scene, and we had booked out half the day to do that, and then the last half of the day was going to be in the warehouse. So we had Danielle at a certain time go to the warehouse to wait for us, so there'd be like a smooth transition. We finished the library, she's going to the warehouse as we're packing up, and we kind of meet, boom, get cracking, get shooting. So on the first day, and it's always weird when you make a movie, the first shot always seems to take forever to light. It's just because you're trying to get everything, and as the movie progresses, you get more into a groove of lighting things. So we finally light this library, we get all the actors, they rehearse. We have this brand new camera that we are the first in the UK at the time to get, called an Ursa G2, and we press record on the first shot and the camera breaks down, and I'm like, what the fuck? Oh my god. So we're like powering it up, powering it down, pressing it. It would record for a couple of seconds and then crash, and I was just like, holy shit. So the producers are looking at me and John, who was the focus puller, and we're kind of huddling around this camera, pretending it's not much of a big issue. But obviously once we start going an hour and a half with not filming anything, people are starting to get worried. And then obviously the other producers are like, Danielle, she's going to be in the warehouse scene soon. Like, we're going to have to go across and start thinking about that. And I'm like, oh my god. And luckily, focus puller John I don't know what he did. He went on the net and he managed to find out that as long as the camera was powered by the mains, it would work. But if it was on battery, for some reason, the camera was crashing. It was so brand new out, it still had bugs. So we were tied to the mains for a good few days, which was a night. Like even shots like this where the camera's on a dolly moving, it is a nightmare when your camera is tied to the mains. So anyway, we finished the library scene. There's a second part in the library scene where Damien goes over to John and he's like kind of he like throws the book down. We literally shot that in less than 30 minutes. As soon as he said his last line, try to get as many shots as you can. Okay, everybody, right, get in the vans, mad rush, pack everything up, and off we go to the warehouse, which was here. And obviously by this point, Danielle's been waiting for about 2 hours. This is like the first time I've really spoke to her, talked to her. She's just kind of sitting there on her phone, and I'm like, oh my god. And I look at how much dialogue there is in this scene. I'm just like, what a start to a movie. And I don't know, there's a couple of, I don't really like this scene just because it's so rushed. The lighting is so rushed. And it was a nightmare to colour grade because it was getting darker outside. So it starts off lighter, where there's more blue, and then by the end of it there's so much orange from the lights. It was just a nightmare to grade. So the first day was a real baptism of fire into this Redwood Massacre Annihilation. And yeah, I remember getting home after the first day, and I was just like, Lorraine, who's my wife and one of the producers, I was just turned to her and I was like, what have we got ourselves into? We are in big trouble. So, yes, necrophilia. When I was writing the script, I put this in as an actual joke. I can actually remember laughing out loud when I wrote it, and I actually showed Lorraine this, and she kind of burst out laughing. She's like, you can't film that? And I was like, why not? It'd be funny. If you want to make Max, if you want the audience to know that Max is really evil, this is the perfect scene. And I only got to do a first draft of the script, and they sent that first draft to Danielle, Damien, everyone, and it was terrible. And I never knew they'd sent that, so I quickly went back and spent like 2 days to do a second draft. I was like, please, can you please send this second draft and tell them to read this, not the first one. It was so different. I managed to go back over and change and fix. And I mean, really, you need another couple of drafts to get a script correct. But this is just the way these kind of movies seem to roll. And I forgot about this scene. And no one got back. Actually, a few people got back and they were like, oh, you know what? They said they really enjoyed the script. And I was like, okay, cool, great, wow. Normally people are always, like, there's problems here, problems there. But they were like, yeah, they really liked it. And there was such a mad rush of pre-production. I completely forgot about this until the day I said, what are we filming? And they were like, the sex scene. And I was like, holy shit, that's right. It's still in the script. So we got Damien and Linny, who's a local in Aberdeen. She agreed to be the dead body. And we got Luke, who is a local, he's from Scotland, to play the husband watching. And we shot that for like 3 hours. And it was hilarious. Very awkward, surreal, as you can imagine. And it was in and out of the movie a million times. I was like, I should really take this out of the film because this is ridiculous. And more so because every time I watched it, I would just burst out laughing. I just found it so stupid. And in the end, I was just like, whatever, let's keep it in. If no one likes the movie, at least they're going to be disgusted by that scene. And they are. So it was kind of a relief to get into the forest because this forest is actually extremely small and we had hired a house for Danielle. She had come over with her 6-month-year-old baby and a nanny. So they had a house, and she was kind enough to let everyone kind of use it as well. And the house was maybe only 100 meters away. And the great thing about filming in a forest is once you do one scene, just turn the camera face the other way. Now you've got a brand new background. It's just trees after all. So it was, I think this was the one time when I was like, okay, I can kind of take a step back and concentrate on making the movie and know that we're not going to be moving anywhere, and, you know, get the shots I actually wanted to get. I'm trying to think. I know John Camplin, he picked his costume, and I think Danielle, she chose her own costume. And Damien, that's not really the way I wanted him dressed, but you know what, it's kind of, I'll say he's dressed in black because he's evil. Damien really didn't have, that was his shoes. He was in the water, and the rest did have wellies, and I'm not sure he had any other shoes to wear that day. So, and yeah, that's the good thing about the US actors who've done these type of movies before, where they've done much bigger movies, big Hollywood movies, a wide, broad range of different productions, from super low budget, medium budget, you know, blah, blah, blah. They are so cool at adapting to where they are, as in, it's very hard to explain. Obviously, when we first, I'm sure when Danielle and that first turned up and it was just chaos behind the scenes, they were probably like, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
Thank you so much for doing
But they were really cool at just adapting, accepting, look, this is low budget. When you watch a movie, you don't really see you don't see what's behind the camera. So as long as it looks good, you know, on screen, that's what matters. And I think these guys kind of eventually started to trust, you know, that, okay, they seem to know what they're doing. I always remember I actually cut some footage together, and I got one of the producers to show it to Danielle, and she got back and says, looks good to me. So, and I think she actually changed, and like I was saying, you don't really know anyone. And to begin with, she would just sit there on her chair on her phone when it was just her. And John, he's very much into his acting, so... And it was maybe a couple of days before Danielle started to, like, kind of open up. And I think when she saw the footage, and she was like, okay, cool, okay, I get... And she's used to making a variety of budgeted movies, so she's very quick to adapt. And Damien, I mean, he's been on what, like, big hit TV show in America. They just, you know, they just get on with it, really. And Gary Casper, obviously, he's just so enthusiastic. It's quite infectious, actually. So this is Gary Casper. This is his intro. Gary actually he got hired as the stunt coordinator as well. I mean, he didn't have much to work. He had no time to do anything. I mean, all this kind of stuff. I think he had good ideas or plans of what he was wanting to do. He just never got the time to really fully realize any of it. I actually found that jacket in a local, it's like a really weird store in my local town of Aberdeen. Some guy, he's like a hoarder of clothes. You go in there and he honestly doesn't want to sell you anything, he wants to keep it. So I found that jacket, cost like $70. I was like, this is the perfect jacket for Gary Casper. So I'm so glad I got it. And originally I actually spray painted it so it looked all worn, and then it looked really cool. And then Lorraine, she's like, this jacket stinks. She washed it and then all the stuff came out, so it's like brand new green again. So annoying. But you can still see some of the spray paint in the early scenes there on his back.
Feels like no one
And
cares.
I would say Gary, he's one of these actors that when you hear people talking about like a charisma, a screen presence, he's definitely someone who, when the camera's on him, he like gravitates towards the audience. You hear people talking about this all the time, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. But he definitely is one of those people. It's so weird.
It's getting a little out of hand.
It's Gus. What do you
And
expect?
Danielle, her acting is quite. For me, it's almost like she wasn't acting; she's just talking. And I think Gary talked about that as well, which it really rubbed off on him. He was like, "It's not like acting when you're with Danielle; you're just having a
I
conversation."
don't know, Tom. Looks a little shady
So
if you ask me.
It was kind of weird because I'm so used to being
Play nice, guys.
not like the other actors in my movies were not professional, but these guys have been in their back catalogue of projects, and you know, if you look through their IMDb, I mean, Gary's been in every movie ever made. If you look at his IMDb, but it's a very interesting thing to watch these guys act together, and you don't necessarily have to direct them. Not in the sense that what people would normally expect when we see behind the scenes video. All I really had to do was
I trust him.
block out the scenes, as in tell them, you know, where I want them to move, where the camera's going to be, or if I wanted them to do something very specific for the camera, example, you know. And that was it. That was much of my input. I can't say I really directed them because they're so on the ball and done this so many times.
Right.
And it's not like we're making an art house film. It's a slasher movie. Yeah. Actually, I just spotted you could actually see dolly tracks behind Daniel in that scene. No way. I don't know how many times I've watched this film and I've never spotted that.
Let me show you my etchings.
Man. Disgusting, Gus.
Party time!
Gus,
Damien
glad to
looking
see you.
mad.
Not bringing a tent is still going strong.
So we had a small crew. I think there was probably maybe about 25 of us, which sounds a lot, but in terms of making movies, it's tiny. And
Fighting this guy.
those guys really busted, and girls busted their asses on this one. It was full on every day. I use a lot of dolly tracks, like older, more classical way of filming, I would say. So no like Steadicam. Like this is like old school dolly track. I remember someone saying, "Oh, he uses dolly tracks from the 80s." People still use dolly
Camp here
tracks.
for the night.
Every movie you watch,
Try and get some
even
rest.
today, has dolly
Sunrise.
tracks. I just prefer the look of dolly tracks because it's less in your face. It's more subtle for me personally. So to the right of Danielle, probably about 50 meters, just behind that tree, is her house.
You okay?
So they would all go in there, into the house, which you can imagine was a complete disaster zone with mud everywhere because of the forest. And we would just call them out, do their scene, and off they went back into their house.
Where's Gus?
I don't know. He was right here.
And then
a
this
second
next scene with Gary, this was a bit further into the woods, but we're talking like 100 meters. And that's the amazing thing about shooting in a forest.
ago. Campers.
Don't worry. We'll lose him at the derm.
Now, originally,
I've never
these
seen one this
campers
far
were going to be seen and then killed by Damien's character, Max. We had like a huge slaughter scene where while they're sleeping, he goes out and massacres all these campers. And we actually shot a scene where they wake up in the morning and they're like, "Where's Max?" And then he appears. He's looking a bit like,
Interesting choice for a gun.
and you see that he's been used the mask and the blade. And the idea was we didn't have time to shoot it. It was such a big scene that because Damien was going to be wearing the mask, we would just get someone his kind of build and shoot the scene. And then fast forward after making the movie, and there was post-production trouble financially. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it. Whatever. We actually went and shot an alternative scene where you saw the Redwood Massacre guy killing the campers, but we ended up scrapping that as well for the reason that at the time I was thinking no one's seen the first one, so if this is a standalone movie, it kind of ruins the big build-up to actually seeing, is he in the bunker, is he there or not? So I cut it out, and then only to find that everybody has seen the first film. I couldn't believe it, all the reviews. Every bugger's seen the first film. So annoying. So this was filmed day for night. Basically, it was planned to shoot at night, but we just couldn't go through the pain of having to light an actual forest at night, and it would have stretched the day longer. And these guys are with the SAG union, so they're only allowed to shoot for a certain amount of time. So we decided to just use this old trick where you kind of throw the white balance off on your camera and try to grade it. And I could have made it look really like it was at night time if I wanted to, but I thought it best just to stick with kind of dusk, that kind of thing. So yeah, one of the disappointments we never filmed that massacre scene. The weird thing is I'm doing this after the films come out. I've read a lot of the reviews, and for the most part, people that like slashers kind of moan that there's not enough violence and gore, which that scene would have really helped. But some of the good reviews have come from people that don't necessarily like horror movies, actually like the slow build of this film. It's more of a mystery, kind of adventure, maybe thriller, I don't know. It's definitely not a slasher film in the traditional sense of being a slasher film. And I think we got... Yeah, we did. I mean, I think people appreciate that we put Damien as a serial killer and kind of mixed him into the group. Just something very... It's not amazingly original, but just something different. So this track, I remember Liam Matheson, one of the co-producers, made Danielle, she had a really bad chest infection, and he made her, for some reason, walk like 6 miles up this track when we told them just to drive up. There was a road just at the top, and she was well pissed off. She was pissed. It was the only time she ever really moaned in the whole movie. She was super ill, and then having to get told to walk 6 miles when we could have just drove in 2 minutes. And I remember we were down in that gorge, and she's like, right, when's the car coming to pick me up? And Hemdi, one of the producers, he's like, it's just on the way, it's just on its way. And Danielle walks away, and I look to Hemdi, because I'm like, we're in the middle of, there is no road here. There's like a little gravelly track. How's a car going to get up here? And he just looked at me with this fear in his eyes. But luckily, the drone operator had a 4x4, and he's like, look guys, I don't know how I'll do it, but I'll get the car down here and pick them up. And he did. Thanks, Kirk. Okay, so this is a real place. This is an old RAF building. It was originally built as a facade because underground this building is a huge military underground secret base, I guess. We were trying to get into this base for years, and the previous owners were they were just such assholes. And then a couple of years ago, we actually shot another movie here, but we heard it was changing owners, and I think on day one of the guy moving in, Harry, we were knocking on his door. Please, can we make a film in here? And luckily, he is super nice. He let us make our other movie, The Dark Within there.
It's not.
And when I was writing the script, I knew no one's seen The Dark Within, let's face it. It's like one IMDb review. But I was like, I'm going to use the bunker again. This is the film that, with the cast we've got, this is the film a location like this is going to be good in. So we filmed in the bunker for, I think it was 9 days. And the plan was we were really struggling to keep on schedule through the forest, the location changes, and there was an actual prison they were going to use. So the plan was, if we can get through that, and by this point we're so behind schedule, we've got 9 days in this underground bunker where all the equipment can come down and it stays there. All the lights can be set up and it stays, and that's going to save time. And we had like a lot of unforeseen problems, should I say. I won't go into it, but Danielle, she was like, look, when it gets to my scenes, we'll make up the time. Like, as in, we won't have any problems. We're just going to bang through it as fast as we can. And, don't worry about your schedule. I'll get you back. And she did. She did. I mean, we were shooting maybe 2 takes max with Danielle on every shot. Just 2. I would have taken the first one. I'd do a second take just because it's a digital camera in case one of the files got corrupted, that kind of thing. So yeah, she kind of saved her ass in the end. So all of this is, a lot of the reviews, they're all, I kind of laugh at it, but they were like, this is David Ryan Keith's passion project because he did the sound, the colour, the editing, the directing. He was the DP. No, this is not my passion project. The reason I had to do that was to get the cast. You want Danielle Harris, Damien, Gary? Well, guess what? You can have them, but there's going to be no money for post-production left. So you're going to have to do all of it yourself. And I'm like, okay. But, I mean, I moan all the way through doing the post-production. It's the sound is the killer for me. And I think maybe the biggest mistake in this movie I made was also being the director / DP. And I think when you've got like an ensemble cast of 5 and they're all different types of actors that approach it completely differently. For instance, Danielle is, I've done this a million times before, I don't really need directed because I've made this film like 200 times. Or you have John Camplin, who takes it very serious, needs a lot more time, explanation, to understand, blah, blah, blah. So as a DP, you're lighting the movie, so the crew won't do anything until you spoke to them about that. And then you've got to put on your director's hat and then speak to the actors, speak through all their problems, what they need to know, blah, blah, blah. And then I was also the cameraman, so I filmed it. So it just felt like a never-ending barrage of questions and problems that would ultimately come my way. And technically we did have a first AD, which is meant to absorb a lot of the problems before they hit me. But because the film was just so manic and rushed and crazy to film, it never really worked out that way. So it was, I think there was me, Lorraine, and Katie, who's the second AD, really took the beating of all the problems, the many problems we faced on this movie together. I don't think we ever had one day where anything, it went perfectly smoothly.
Boogie, boogie.
Jesus Christ, guys.
So this corridor, this is the real corridor that leads down to the base. Looks cool, nightmare to film because it's so tight. Not many options where to put lights, And yeah, speaking about doing all of the post-production.
What the hell is this place?
I don't know.
I
but
don't
heard
think it's
something
that.
down there.
It's not that common now for people that are making movies to take on bigger roles in the post-production. Maybe not as much as I did here. I did like the Foley, I did everything. It's crazy. And
I thought you said this place
when the
was
movie
bad.
came out,
It
I
is.
can't tell you how disappointed I was to realise the distributor had fucked up the transfer. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, so the film plays almost grey and desaturated, and one of the reasons I'm putting out the special edition, there's nothing worse than spending 3 weeks colour correcting a film, agonising over every colour, making sure all the blacks are black, all the shadows are looking good, and then someone else fucks up your movie. And the worst part of it is the distributor pays to put it to a film lab who does, it's called a QC test, which is meant to quality control the product, make sure it's good enough for television, whatever, VOD. And those are the guys that messed it up. It's unbelievable. And as it stands, they are denying there's anything wrong with the film. So I have videos over with them, like clearly proving they've done it wrong. So let's see if it ever gets fixed. I doubt it, because guess what? No one gives a fuck except the people that make the movies when it comes to distribution. So there's like a weird, that's not actually cold breath coming from Gary's mouth. That's the crazy movie smoke machines we use. They're not, I'd even think they're technically qualified as movie smoke machines. But because we're filming in underground bunker, the air down there was kind of weird, and the smoke. I think everyone got ill, and I think it was all because of this movie smoke. Literally in your lungs. It took weeks for it to come out of me. So this is funny because it was always going to be a dick in a jar, but originally it was going to be the dick first, and then he sees the eyeball, and then he drops the eyeball and he squishes that. And then Gary came up to me and he's like, I gotta ask you something. He goes, why would I be scared of an eyeball after seeing a human dick? And I was like, actually, that's a good point, Gary. We need to switch these round. And I think Samantha, who was the makeup artist, she helped Johan with some of the effects. She filled, I don't know how she did this, but I'm sure it was like a one-take wonder.
It might be the others.
What if it's not?
So with a location like this, it's not hard to make it look good.
Stay here.
And we were lucky this corridor had like a ledge above Gary. It was like a weird deep ledge, and we managed to put all the lights up on there to light the corridor. Otherwise, I'm not sure how we would have done it. And it just had enough room to put down dolly track. I mean, me and John on the dolly, we were pretty like squished against the wall, you know, as we were getting pushed down on these scenes. And all I did was I ordered quite a lot of midnight blue gel, and then we did some kind of weird thing in the white balance on the camera, and then kind of graded it with a bit of green to try and get this kind of look. These door shots were filmed 6 months later.
It's okay.
So this doesn't look like a big dolly track, but there was a lot of dolly track here.
Last time.
I don't know.
And I've got to say that John, who did the
I hope so.
focus, he was brilliant. I think there was only like 1 or 2 shots out of the whole shoot that were out of focus, and we were shooting with Cine Prime lenses, and a lot of the time the lenses were like flat open, which means the depth of field, how much focus around the actors, it was like critical focus. And honestly, I started doing weirder shots, on the dolly, just to see if he could keep it in focus, and he did. So I started doing more dolly shots. In fact, when we started the movie, every time I would ask for the dolly tracks to be set up, even if Stephen Durham didn't have a watch on his wrist, he would look down at his wrist, and eventually he's like, look, we don't have time for all these dolly shots and blah, we just need to get the shots done and move on to the next scene. And I understand, but it's just, I like cinema dolly shots. I think, like for here, I think it adds more cinematic, it goes well with the music, creates tension. And I think I ended up using more dolly tracks on this movie than any of the other movies I've ever done. Much to the disgust of Stephen Durham. So we needed to fill this room up with chains, and those chains were heavy. They were proper heavy, putting them up. We had to find clothes and that. And then when they dressed the set, they had the chains up, and they had all the clothes. And I'm looking at these clothes, and I'm like, what? These are my clothes. Lorraine, she's always moaning about all my old clothes and how they fill up the cupboard and all that. She'd only went and basically raided all my clothes, splattered them with blood and put them in the scene. So yeah, by the time this movie was over, I literally had no clothes left. That's his real driving license. So if you freeze frame, you'll get his name and address. And here's co-producer Liam Matheson, who was in the first film. He was actually the farmer that kills the kids.
Check out the background.
And Benjamin Selway, who also played the original Redwood Massacre, or as it's called now, Burlap Killer in the first film. So these guys went down and shot some pictures before the movie, so we had it on camera, because there's nothing worse than, you know, not having the pictures and having to put them in post-production. It always looks terrible.
It's us.
So people there, I remember people are always like, why do they always separate in horror movies? And this is why they do it. This is the secret. Because having 5 people together for a whole movie is impossible. The amount of coverage you have to get when people are speaking. For instance, the scene in the forest when all 5 of them meet, every time someone speaks, you've got to film all the other people's reactions. You don't know if you might need it in the edit, so you got to film it. It's called coverage, and it is so boring, and it ultimately means that actors have got to do the same scene over and over and over again. And this is a single camera movie, so we only have one camera. So in the script, and especially low budget movies, even bigger budget movies, you try and separate them into smaller groups as fast as you can, and it makes it easier to shoot and easier to schedule.
For protection.
These were all prop weapons supplied by a local called Barry Thackeray. He was in one of the grips, and he also helped out with some of the special effects in the film.
You happy?
I think the gun, Gus, massive big gun called Big Bubba, is actually Barry. I think Barry turned it into like a light shade or a lamp. I'm sure it had like a place for you to plug it in.
You just stay close to me. You're gonna be fine. I promise you.
And at first, when I knew Barry had these guns when I was writing the script. It was, is this ridiculous? And then I was like, you know what, whatever. If they're going to have guns, why not make them have the biggest guns in the world?
There's got to be another exit.
You've seen what's
So you can see the movie smoke behind Danielle, polluting her lungs.
I don't think we have a choice.
So I never knew the guys did this. Some of the crew, all that was in the script was there was a skeleton hanging up, and one of them came down and was like, you want to see what we've done? And I went up and they tangled all these wires around it, made it look so much better than it deserved to be, really. And I've got to say that special effects guy Johan, he did a really good job actually of making these skeletons look good, because they were just like those stupid skeletons you buy off the net. You know, like pure white, the ones you see in school. This was just filmed on the fly. We had like a spare second and Ben was there and I was with Focus John. I was like, okay, quickly put a light in there and a light here, film his feet coming out, because I've got a funny feeling I might need to use it. And I did. And this was another shot filmed 6 months later on the pickups. Really hard to match the lighting, so I don't know if it worked or not. That mask, we actually bought that mask for another movie called Ghost of Darkness. We had like this scene at the end that was supposed to have like a demon, and we originally shot it with that mask, and it it just looked terrible. So we ended up, the computer guy was like, I can do it in effects, and then funnily enough, it turned out worse in the effects. So this was a pickup shot. By this point, a lot of the gore effects hadn't worked the way we wanted it to. So we were super aware we now had a movie that had hardly any gore. So we went back and added in this scene, which hopefully is gory enough. It is a bit annoying that the gore we had planned, we just couldn't get to work. But in the end, I can honestly say we're lucky with what we got.
No.
This is actually Ryan Livingston. He was the boom operator. We had Brian, who was the sound mixer, and Ryan was the boom operator. And he's like an aspiring actor. And yeah, he was like, I'll do it. And I was like, cool. Okay, let's go and saw his legs off. So he came back, and I'm not sure how they did this. I'm sure they bought like big joints of ham, and that's what he's sawing. I can't really remember now. So this is a real prison. This place was disgusting. Maybe this is where Danielle got ill. This is called Peterhead Prison. This exact place is where they used to keep all the paedophiles, the worst of the UK, would be shipped up to this prison. And it's been closed down for maybe 10 years, maybe less, I'm not sure. But we rented this out for one day, and when we had to go up before, because the whole place was covered in bird shit, and I mean everywhere was bird shit. So we had to try and clean it out the best we could, and the whole place, the whole roof was like a skylight, so we had to buy this massive black tarpaulin sheets to block out all the light. It was an absolute nightmare, and I can't tell you how much this place stunk. Oh my god, it's disgusting. I think maybe this was like I can tell you exactly, this was day 5 of the shoot. I think at this point Danielle's probably like, what the fuck? Why did my agent get me signed up on this movie?
Who knows?
But I mean, it looks good, and I'm sure there was like 3 levels, so it was easy to light because we had all these netting everywhere, and we put the lights high up, and so it was kind of cool to light, and it looks really cool. It looks really good on camera. But whoa, it was horrible. And then the other part we used the prison for was actually their canteen that comes up later in the movie when John Campling is hiding behind the table. That was a nightmare day. I'll get to that one. I never knew this, but Lorraine blasted £800 on that thing. I was like, yeah, oh my god, it looks amazing, it looks cool. But for £800? So there's another good example of John keeping everything in focus. I mean, these are tight shots, 50mm, lens wide open, and he did a great job. I'm just like rocking the camera in and out, and he's keeping her in focus somehow. So So we really did think no one had seen the first film. We knew it did well in the US financially, like I said, but that's like a drop in the ocean compared to actual bigger movies. So I decided it's probably a better idea to change the backstory, make it a bit more simple for the newer audience that was going to watch this. Obviously, having Danielle, her fan base attracts a bigger horror audience. Damien, Grimm, Gary, every million movies he's been in, etc. So we tried to like give it some kind of like weird conspiracy. Like I like all that kind of shit, all the like Area 51 and all that kind of stuff. And I think people that hadn't seen the first film appreciate it. They're like, it's still stupid. Let's face it, it's stupid. But people that watched the first one were like, it's not like the first one. So I apologise for that. There's some cameos from other movies that are made in Scotland. I actually reached out to a few other indie horror people, and it's so annoying, to ask if I could use their character. And they said yes, but we'd already finished the scene. I was like, man. So we would have had some cool other low-budget indie horror characters that people might know in those photos.
What happened to all the patients?
So this day 5 in the prison was probably the worst day of filming for the entire, maybe not actually now I think about it, but the pressure, the owner of this prison literally, I won't say all day, but he would constantly be watching us, basically looking at his clock, ready to kick us out. And I think we'd booked it actually until like 4 a.m. We started shooting at 9. It was going to be like such a long, super long day. And then we were like halfway through the shoot, and one of the producers is like, we're getting kicked out of here at 2. So I'm like, oh my God, it's like 2 hours down in the schedule. So it was a mad rush to get this all filmed. It's a lot of handheld footage. It's amazing we got it done, because remember, 90% of the cast are from the US, and they ain't coming back for pickups. So halfway through shooting John's scenes, I had to stop, make sure I shot out all the American stuff, much to his disgust. Because the idea at the time was I could get John back. He's in England, so it's only like 5 hours away. If we had to, I could get him back to shoot anything we missed. But thankfully, we got it all done. Just. So Tevi, she came in quite late. Like the madness of this movie, she came in, for day 5, and those first 4 days was just crazy. Honestly, it was quite a surreal. The film was all over the place, and it was like a pressure cooker. And then Tevi came in on a day 5 to do the prison stuff. So I think she was probably like, what's going on? But then by the time we got to the bunker for the last 9 days, that's where we knew we were over the worst. We knew we were in a controlled location. We could control the lighting. Didn't have to worry about the weather, whatever. We had okay, fair enough, it was cold down there, but we had a room with a heater. We had our lunches delivered. It was like a luxury shoot compared to the madness of the first half. One little fun trivia, I noticed none of the skeletons have trousers on or t-shirts. They literally died naked with a doctor's coat. One of those oversights, I guess. I mind you. One of the good things working with Damien, he definitely he doesn't take this stuff too seriously, and as soon as the cameras are rolling, he's definitely a 1,000,000% switched on and professional. But I quite enjoy working with him because he doesn't take it seriously. So it doesn't. Because remember, filmmaking is supposed to be fun, so I'm told. You know, making a horror film like this should be fun. But ultimately, with the schedule and that kind of stuff, it's just so. Ooh, you know, it's not fun. Let's be honest, it's not fun at all. But, working with Damien, it's more relaxing because we know what we have to get done, but it doesn't have to be such a serious endeavour to get it, you know, get it in the can. And it was nice to split Damien and Gary together, even though the height difference was a nightmare for framing. But she is definitely a professional, and so is Gary, as in, it's hard to explain. They know exactly what they have to do and they will get it done, and they're happy to move on as quickly as, especially Danielle, onto the next shot. It's very proficient, let's say, which worked in my favour hugely. And then Gary, he came from a different kind of angle where he's so sickening, as in he's so happy and positive all the time that it's impossible, even if you're having a bad day, if you've got a Gary scene coming up, we knew, you know, it was going to be fun. But he would come up with all this backstories for his character and all this crazy stuff. And before this movie, if someone had said that to me, I would have been like, oh, wow, bloody actors, you know, like, what are they going on about? Backstories and all that. But it actually really worked for me. It actually, listening to him talk about his character and his backstory and all this kind of stuff reminded me that we are making a horror movie and it's kind of fun, and I kind of enjoyed the way he was approaching his work, I guess, and kind of rubbed off on me. I actually started to enjoy it.
Fuck her and fuck Max.
How she got down there, I'll never know. But that is the executive producer's wife, Stephanie, and she flew over from Las Vegas for a few days. And Stephanie's so funny. She just walked into a madhouse, did her scenes, and then off she went back to Las Vegas. But we shot. She came in and I had like a certain type of clothes I wanted her to wear, but she like turned up like she just walked out of, you know, like one of the biggest fashion retails in America. And we shot her, I think we had her for 2 days. I shot her the first day, and then the second day one of the producers is like, Stephanie wants to change her clothes, she's not happy with the way what she had on. I was like, what? I can't change it. So they're like, okay. This is the executive producer's wife, remember. So off they went back to tell Stephanie that nope, I think she actually just expected us to reshoot it. I was like, if we do that, you're gonna have to tear like 10 pages out of the script. So someone went back and told her, and they came back and they're like, she's not happy. She is not happy. So I had to go through and just explain to her. I was like, look, I don't have time. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I'm sorry. After that, she was cool. But I mean, I think Stephanie thinks we're all mad. She's so funny. Damien, Damien added on all these weird sexual touches. Like, there's probably people that watch this movie that think I'm some kind of weird pervert. He would add in on like touching, tapping the knife off of Lisa Cameron's boobs at the start, touching the guy's leg, putting that knife between her, and you're doing these in little increments over a period of days. And I'm always like, yeah, oh my God, that's creepy. Oh my God, that's a great idea. But then when you start cutting it together, you're like, holy shit. This guy's like sexually assaulting each person before he kills them. And I think it works. I think it makes him more sinister, more creepy. And this scene, we shot this pretty quick as well. It's actually the same room as the one with the chains, except we put some of that white sheeting in there to try and make it look different. I don't know if it worked or not. And Tevi did a really good job here actually, because you gotta keep like that for, you know, like an hour or 2 hours, keep that kind of energy up, you know, as you die, I guess. And I thought she did a really good job here. This was this was gonna be so much better. This is so rubbish compared to what was supposed to happen. And we're even lucky this worked. I think like she was gonna get stabbed, and then the knife gets stuck in her, and then the burlap killer goes round the front, and then it's like yanking it back through her with all her bones breaking out and everything. And it just I knew as soon as they set it up, I was like, this isn't gonna work. So we had to end up going back to how we shot the first one and do like old school camera techniques. So I'm gutted about that one.
Find this place.
We were just camping. It killed my husband. Who did?
You really have no idea, do you?
Mysterious. She looks amazing for being in that bunker for how many years? I remember this was a really hard shot. This is, if you look, it's dolly track round, and then it still moves round them one way, and then it stops and then moves round them back the other way. We did this shot about 6 times, and the one time I nailed it, Stephen Durham, the producer, jumped out of that door and goes, "Boogie, boogie, boogie," to scare Danielle. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was nailing the shot. I think this is the last shot, the last take I did, which it looks okay, but it wasn't as good as the one he jumped out. But in fairness, I think everyone did need a good laugh at that point. Where's she gone? She could be anywhere. I mean, she got down that hatch in less than like 10 seconds. She could be up in the roof. So we're back in this prison. So this is probably about 11 o'clock at night by this point.
Next.
And I've got till 2, and I know I've got a scene with Gary crying, and this massive scene with John going around the table that has like a million different shots, and it needs lit because all the lights are out. So even filming this, which was a simple, and there's other shots of John walking about randomly, blah blah blah. I still remember even filming this, where there was a big clock in this this canteen room, and it was hard not to look at it and see, like, 1 minute I'll do a shot, I look, and there's like 45 minutes of Pat. I'm like, oh my god, I'm running out of time. I am running out of time. There's the clock, my nemesis throughout this whole shoot in that prison. And if you look to the left here, as the camera moves in, you'll see an ARRI light. Bing!
Max.
Don't really notice it, but... This generator, it was actually one of the... I'm not sure what it did actually, but it had nothing to do with lights. I just remember the owner, Harry, switched it on one day and it was like, and I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. That's going in the movie. This is actually co-producer Liam Matheson and Key Grip. Benjamin Selway, who plays the killer, has a sore back. And that's actually Sam, the makeup artist, that's her ass. That was part of the pickup shot. So Ben couldn't do it because he had a sore back. So we had a spare costume, and Samantha thankfully allowed us to use her ass in that one shot. Yeah, so this was hardcore. This was hardcore, and Mr. John Camplin was extremely pissed off during this scene and extremely difficult to work with. And it's partly our fault and partly his fault, I would like to say. I'm not sure he understood the time pressures we were under, and we were kind of messing him about, as in we'd shoot part of his scene and then stop, and then we'd have to go and get the Americans, make sure we shot all their scenes because we're running out of time, and then try to explain to him, right now we're going to continue your scene, but now instead of like an hour to do it, we've got like 40 minutes. And I think John, he approaches his work where he wants the time, and understandably, yes, I completely agree, and he needs to know what's going on at all times. But in a movie like this, it's all over the place. It's get what you can, when you can. So he was a bit pissed off. And then in return, I was a little bit pissed off. And this was only day 5. But he got it done. And to be fair to John, we didn't even really have any time to block this out. So I'm actually talking him through the scene, and I'm like, now you see this, and now you look over there, now you grab this. So he's like reacting to this in real time. So I've got to give him credit. And we shot this so fast. This is the quickest I've ever shot anything in my life. We literally had the prison owner sitting in a seat with his wife, watching us, looking down at his clock, dying to kick us out. And like, I'd be like, okay, this shot, right, this shot, this shot, this shot, that shot. Like that for maybe an hour, maybe less. We shot this all, I can't even remember now, but I think this was John's breaking point here. All he had to do was come over and take this gun out. But in between that, we had to shoot Gary Casper, seeing Tevi dead later on the movie. And it turns out, by coincidence, John had been somewhere else. He'd be like keeping in character for ages, like keeping out of breath. And I just finished this other scene, and he just happened to walk in, just randomly, to see what was happening. And I'm like, okay, John, go, get in place. We need to shoot. And he's just like, what's going on? What the fuck's going on? I'm like, this, what, So, it's madness. So I think this was shot on John's last day, if I remember. In fact, there ended up being a lot of tension between John and the producers. It's normal in movies, all this, honestly, so much drama behind the scenes, and even the smallest thing becomes a big thing in the world of movies. But
This thing's old.
I can't remember why. I'm sure one of the producers, I can't remember now if I'm honest, but
Should be able to get this thing up and running.
John's death is not what was supposed to happen in the movie. He had a much bigger death, and we just cut it down. We'll literally cut his head off, just to end the drama. I think this film needed, what did I say, we had 18 days, that's including days off. The budget for this film was just shy of $200,000. By the time you take off the crew wages, their accommodation, I think I had about $70,000 to actually make the film, which sounds a lot. Now let's convert that down to British pound. $50,000, and that included, I had to pay for the crews, their accommodation, etc., etc. So technically, even though this was like a $200 movie, I'm making a £50,000 film. So it wasn't that far off what the original cost. The original cost $30,000, and I thought that was low budget. So if you look at it that way, it's, but then you're paying for the actors, you're paying for what they bring to the movie. So that's the trade-off. So by this point, John knew, or maybe he didn't know, that we were going to kill him off. But when he found out the way we were going to kill him off, he was pissed. He was annoyed. I'll tell you exactly, all he knew was when Ben came out behind him, and that was it. That was the end of John. That was his rap. Here, this shot, that was his rap. So he didn't even know what was going to happen. And either did we. We had to come back 6 months and 6 months later and kind of fix it. So he's really pissed off here, but still doing good acting. And there's the reshoot. We actually managed to find a dummy's head, and they found a wig and a beard. It actually looked like John. I just added this in. I was like, his head's there, just give it a good kick. But as a result of not filming the original John death scene, because Danielle in the original scene was going to shoot the burlap killer, and that's how she got rid of all of her bullets. We had to quickly make this scene up on the spot and film it in like 40 minutes. So the crew just quickly put up all these sheets, try to make it look different, and we had her shoot the sheets just to get rid of the bullets. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then we just took every single prop. That's the prop from the prison location. Every stupid ass thing like that we bought, we just hung up. And instead of finding the necklace in the original scene, she just finds it here now. It's so annoying because it was such a cool death scene. It had like Danielle like shooting the killer's head, and you know, like John was going to be a way to lift its mask back, and then she's just like bam, 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 bam. But these things happen. I think Danielle, at the time I'm obviously shooting this, so I don't appreciate that she was actually squeezing out some tears there. And I would, if I kind of messed up the camera move, I would have to ask her to do it again. I think she did this like 4 times before we got it right. But yeah, she managed to make it look good each time. I'm kind of gutted because I was so busy. I never really got the opportunity to proper speak with Danielle. And when I did, I'd ask her about all the movies like Halloween and Hatchet and all that. And some of her stories were so interesting, you know, for anyone who likes movies and horror movies. She's definitely one of the people you want to have a sit-down conversation with. She's been an actress since she was like, I don't know, like 2 years old, no doubt. But kind of wish I got more time with her.
Hello.
But she did tell me some pretty cool behind-the-scenes stories and some about some actors and all that I probably shouldn't repeat. So again, they were going to be reacting to a completely different scene. So they had to act this out, not knowing what was happening anymore. I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what we're going to do now. So just... It was going to originally be John. He'd been like mortally injured, and he crawls down the steps in the Redwood Massacre, like basically chops him up in front of her. And I think that would have changed the way these two guys acted. And then eventually, 6 months later, when we went back and shot the dummy, there was nothing else we could really do. I mean, it looks like a dummy. It looks like he's sticking the knife in his ass. And then peeling some of his ass and putting it in a jar.
Come on, keep watching, keep watching.
I don't actually mind it. I kind of like the way John died in this one as well. It's nice and quick, and but I know these guys, they did like a live Zoom commentary on YouTube when the film first came out, and they said this was one of the harder scenes they had to do because they had no idea what was happening. Why he puts him in jars? Who knows? Maybe I'll explain that in the third film. I think originally I was going to have him pull back the mask and he like ate some of it. But then you had the whole problem with showing teeth and the rubber mask, and
You ought to be proud of that.
yeah, I really like this scene. I like the music. I like how we filmed it. I like how we lit it. Now the fight scene, these guys rehearsed. I'm sure it was both Damien and Gary that coordinated the fight, and their original idea was Danielle Harris is tiny. I'd kill her in 2 seconds, but if we make the fight like a brutal takedown of the body, as in she first hits him in the throat, chokes him, and then breaks down his arms and his legs, you know, systematically breaks him down as he's choking, and then gives him a good stamping on the face, that we might get away with it. But they only had an hour to rehearse the whole fight scene. 1 hour. And then we only had like an hour to film it. So it's 2 hours. Doesn't seem like a lot, but in the world of mad filming days, 2 hours that's a lot of time to take out your day. So they rehearsed, and then once the hour was up, we started shooting and shooting and shooting until we thought we had enough. And it turns out we probably didn't have enough. And the way I edited it is like the old Van Damme movies, you know, where you double play a punch. Whoosh, whoosh. It's like similar angles just to give it a bit more impact. But I think it's okay. I like it. I like it. I remember one of the producers were like, it looks a bit too staged, but we didn't really have, like, I think Damien had some pads for when he fell down or when he gets like punched in the balls by Danielle, but this was the best we could do, the time we had. It was kind of amazing to manage to coordinate this kind of fight in such little amount of time.
From the very beginning.
At this point, Danielle, her chest infection was really bad, and I don't know if it's still in the movie, but when she laughed, it was like... Yeah, she was struggling. And plus, she had her 6-month-old baby, so she was like breastfeeding. Should I say that? Well, I guess I just did, but... So... It must have been a tough one for her because she probably didn't get much sleep, and she had one of her friends over, Nikki, and I didn't even know until towards the end Nikki was like an actress in some big movies as well.
That gun's actually loaded.
So this was the idea: take out the throat, so it's kind of disabled, breathing wise, and then break down like the arm, doof, and eliminate that. Back to the breathing, take out his balls, apparently. Leg, balls. That looks like a hard hit. I actually watched that back. It looks like Damien really did hit his head off that floor. And I got to say, that floor is concrete, and it was freezing. Look how much layers. Have you ever seen a movie where Danielle has wrapped up so much? She's like normally the sex symbol, but she was very clever to make sure that she wore like about 1 million layers in this movie. But we had Damien obviously in the tank top, and he's lying on that freezing floor for about an hour. Now, this was another death scene that didn't work. Originally, it was planned, and we were told it was going to work, that the Redwood Massacre guy was going to like basically stab him through the stomach, snap his spine, then literally rip his whole head and spine out. Now, if you've already seen the movie, that's not what actually happened. But even when I said, let's just pull his head off, I think he was going to gouge his eyes out, everything. And they even made a dummy head, which was horrendous. It basically looked like a melted version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. But even when the way they designed it for the head to come off didn't work, and the blood, they had all these like air pressured blood cannons that just, it sounds good, but they're so high pressure, the blood's just like, psh, it's gone, you don't see anything. So in the end, we ended up just getting like empty bottles, put the blood in, and beneath the camera, squeeze the bottles so the blood would come out. It was ridiculous. But it's the only thing we could get to work. We were running out of time, we had to have something. And the way Damien did it, and the way we kind of, it's like a very quick cuts. I think it works. It looks like a good decapitation, but it's one of those things where it could have been so much better. I think this whole movie is gore-wise. Imagine what it could have been. Just get away with it. And Damien's head's obviously not got as much hair. One of the big problems about doing the post-production yourself is you kind of lose sight of where you are in terms of the movie. You've shot it, you've lit it, you've filmed it, and now you're editing it, you're color grading it, and you kind of get sucked into more of the technical side of how movies are made. And I don't think it's a good thing for someone to be in charge of all of those departments. And this movie's probably too long. It's not until you're obsessed about the sound and done everything, when it's really too late, you start to look back and you're like, shit, maybe I could have cut that out, maybe I could have shortened that, maybe I could have extended that. So it's one of those weird things. When you're editing, you're always watching the scenes in small sections. You're never getting to see the bigger picture. It's like a race to get through the edits. And, it's like a 90, 100 minute movie. It's not till the movie's finished when you really sit back, watch it, and then you're like, shit, it's maybe too long, maybe too short, whatever.
My name is Laura Dempsey.
That was co-producer Liam's girlfriend at the time. She was over here on holiday from America. She was actually the first girl at the start of the movie to die. And she kindly did the voice for us. And then Liam does the voice of the male that comes on.
Hello? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Shit. Hello?
Like this scene, I would have got rid of this scene, but at the time I was like, these guys have got all these guns and there's not one scene with guns yet. And I knew I'd filmed this, so I was like, I may as well at least show him using his gun at least once. But then obviously we didn't have enough money to do proper gun muzzle flashes, and so I think this should have been one of the scenes that probably was taken out. I even had to do the goddamn special effects. I don't know how to do special effects. So this was the scene we had to stop John midway through, turn all the lights back on, and make sure we'd finish Gary's scene. Poor Tevi. She had to lie on that table for a long time. And there was a couple more scenes we shot that I eventually cut out with Gary and the Redwood Massacre guy playing kind of cat and mouse. But the film was running, I was starting to get worried. Once the film went past 95 minutes, I was like, shit. So I started cutting stuff out and...
Show yourself, motherfucker! You fucking piece of pig shit!
the scene involved him using his gun more, and he like shot up the whole bunker. It was like... And I'm kind of glad we didn't keep it in, because I would have had to ultimately do the effects, no doubt. I think it was after here he goes down, picks up the gun, but then he hears the Redwood Massacre up on the balcony above him, which you'll see, and he kind of turns around and he's just like, ding, 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 ding. That doorway you see, it's all lit perfectly for the killer to come in. And this is, the close-up is actually him sensing him behind him. Movie magic.
Where the hell are you?
So this was the last day. We shot for 16 hours. We knew we had to have this massive fight with Gary, and they'd spent some time planning it out. And they showed me, but I was off filming other stuff. Like Danielle, if all the Americans were literally leaving the next morning. So we started filming this scene probably about 10 at night, and we didn't finish until like 2 in the morning. But they were doing the fight scene, and then when it eventually came to shoot, and after the fight scene, I knew I had to still wrap Danielle up. She had to come and do all her end lines for the end of the movie. But I soon realized, holy shit, you can't really put the camera anywhere when you're filming a fight in a corridor, never mind light it. So these corridors, you can see behind Ben, they've got those lights. These actors, it doesn't matter where they go in this corridor, they are standing under one of those lights. And then we had one of the crew, Joe, he had like a 300 watt ARRI light, and we would get that in underneath wherever we could. We had it on like a lighting stand, like a long boom arm, and he would stick the light in. It was ridiculous. So there's a light above Gary. When it cuts to Ben, there is a light above Ben. And when they go to fight, there will always be a light above them. So he stepped away from the light, he's in the dark. There's nowhere to put lighting stands. It's so tight.
Stay right there.
So this was a mad rush. Everyone could see the end in sight, but I just knew, I could feel we were rushing this. We were. And one of the disappointments of the first film was we always wanted to have this big fight, but the actor who was playing one of the characters just wouldn't do it. And I knew Gary, he was well up for doing like a big kind of showdown. And remember, Gary's like 60 years old, and they're like chucking him, like random boxes. He was laughing because he was saying his stunt friends will watch this and they'll be like, oh, where did the boxes come from, Gary, and the mat you land on? And Lorraine bought some of these props, like a box. Now he's got like a brick. Surprised he doesn't pick up their kitchen sink in a moment. And we didn't even have time to shoot these scenes with this scene we shot, but we didn't have time to shoot these scenes with Ben. We came back 6 months and did all these inserts. And then this was one of the only effects they couldn't do, so we had to pay money to get Martin Fernandez in Barcelona, who kindly did all these effect shots on the cheap. I remember Danielle, she pulled me aside one day and she's like, I've already done this ending in Hatchet 2. And I was like, it was embarrassing because I had to tell her I hadn't seen any of the Hatchet movies. And I've since watched a few of them and they're pretty cool. And you can tell the way she says this next line, she knows she's said this like a million times before. Try coming back from that, motherfucker. Even for this, it's like one shot. We've marked the focus so we can rack back and forward. But it's like a quick way of saving time from doing different setups.
Right where I wanted him.
And it works. It actually works here.
Now what?
But normally you would film her close-up, his close-up, a wide shot, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is funny because these two guys thought they were going to be acting opposite Danielle and Gary, and as soon we filmed Gary and Danielle's shots first, these ones, and they were just talking to Katie, who was doing the script, and then that was them. They were off, back to their hotel, getting their flight home the next morning. Now, Alec and Gav, they were in a room waiting, and this was like late at night. It's like 2 a.m. now. So we call them up, and they're like, "Where's Danielle and that?" And I'm like, "She's left. She's away home." So I think Gavin was more disappointed because he's a big fan. That's Gavin there. He's a big fan of Danielle. But Alec knew the score. You know what I mean? And Alec was in the first movie. He died, and I tried to get him in some of my other movies, but could never do it. So I was like, he can come back for this one. Of course he can. No one's seen the first film. And we filmed, obviously, Stephanie talking to no one a lot earlier in the shoot. It was her idea to lick the mask. And then when she went to do it, she wouldn't put her tongue on it. And I was like, Stephanie, if you're going to lick the mask, you got to lick the mask. So this was the one take she did it. Phew, God, that was a hell of a commentary. I guess if you're still watching at this point, thank you for watching the Blu-ray disc, because no doubt I've been screwed over and that terrible copy is still available worldwide. So finally people can watch it the way it was intended to be seen. Redwood Massacre 3, maybe. We've got a really cool idea that will bring back Danielle, Gary and Damien playing themselves. So nothing to do with the storyline of the first and second one. But hopefully this one does well enough that I can do the third. And if I do, I'll make sure I do another bullshit commentary and release another special edition disc. Thanks so much for watching and listening, guys. Catch you next time.